So in a continuing bout of unchecked genocidal insanity, it looks like this Rafah assault is actually going to happen. And whether or not a ceasefire deal is ever reached, Bibi says this assault will move forward, even though it's completely operationally non-viable. Since clearing through 1.4 million people is not possible from a military perspective, they don't really have a plan. There's some vague notion about checkpoints where they'll separate women and children from men. Never heard of that before. Pretty much just, leave the men in Rafah, shoot a bunch of them, say they were Hamas, even though they weren't Hamas, even though Hamas is really not in Rafah. They're in the north and middle Gaza, still conducting complex ambushes, but they'll kill a bunch of men, claim it was Hamas, and then Bibi will say, total victory. We've defeated them. Just kidding. He'll try to keep this thing going as long as possible. And it's true, Israel feels empowered by this $26.5 billion aid package, but honestly, that's really not going to last them as long as you guys think. Plus, they're short on munitions, they're short on soldiers, their GDP continues to shrink, and people continue to leave the country back to their own places of origin. So what can you do in the meantime? And bear in mind, Israel does not actually have enough time to effectuate this genocide. Well, you can continue to protest and support unconditionally these student movements that are bursting out of campuses all across the country. These are both symbolically and practically important, because one of the things is that we see that violence of cops is connected to what the IDF's doing in Palestine. Foucault rarely ever talked about colonialism, but there is something called the Imperial Boomerang, where an empire's system of colonial oppression will, through imperial feedback, return to be visited upon through the police its own citizens. The UK and then US municipal police were birthed out of Northern Ireland British goon squads and slave patrols in the Caribbean and Carolinas. Cops have always been militarized, and they've always served only the interests of the ruling class. Imperialism and colonialism is interconnected, and it's bad for everyone on both sides of the ocean. And of course, it's inestimably worse for the directly colonized. But as you can see through this imperial feedback in the police on college campuses, we're all colonized in some way. Free speech, not really a thing. Right to assembly, not so much. But these college protests are spreading awareness, because it is happening in the Ivies, it's happening at prestigious universities, to the children of the ruling class, children who are supposed to, sorry to call you children, kids, young adults who are supposed to eventually be part of that class. And now you got cops tuning them up. The goon squads who are supposed to be enforcing their privilege, basically, doing the opposite, just because these students are saying, hey, let's not kill kids anymore and do a genocide. These protests are spreading awareness. They're forcing a conversation in a way that hasn't happened since the escalation on October 7th. The entire system is beginning to go into free fall, and it's completely out of reckoning. This Rafah assault, again, looks like it's going to happen, so the socio-political pressure in America continues to mount and needs to build momentum. In my estimation, the ceasefire conversation's never really been an earnest option. So fuck it, this ends in liberation and the dismantling of apartheid. So keep pushing, and then we'll do an entire podcast episode on this proposed Rafah assault and break it down operationally so we can see how insane it is. See you on the next one. Cheers.